Hi, I'm Maggie. Thank you for stopping by Crafts the Charm today. I'm so glad you're here. Today I want to make some sisal bats in a sort of primitive style. So I'm starting with this sisal rope, which I got at Walmart. I'll include a link in the description. It's a 1/4 inch by 100 feet, and it costs $5.84 right now. And I'm going to cut 3-inch lengths of this. I'm going to cut 20 of them. I was thinking 20 would probably give me 4 or 5 bats. And what I did end up making out of the 23-inch lengths was 4 of my larger size bats and 2 of my smaller size bats. So once you've cut those, you're going to want to separate the fibers. So I just start by separating into 3 pieces, and then I take all of those and I separate it further. So you want to get as close to individual fibers as you can. And once I have those mostly separated, I'm going to dye them. To dye these, I'm going to begin with some black acrylic paint. This is Apple Barrel acrylic paint in black. And I'm going to add water to that. Now this is a very messy process, which is why I have a tray here and gloves, but I think I probably should have put down a drop cloth underneath this as well. Now I'm going to mix in enough water so that I can soak all of the fibers, because the fibers are still wavy from being twisted into rope. You could soak the fibers first in water to straighten them out, and then completely dry them, and then that way you could maybe use less water in this process, and maybe you would get a darker color than I got here. I diluted this paint quite a lot. But so I soaked them, and as they're soaking, I'm separating them further and trying to make sure that every single fiber is soaked. And then once I had the fibers soaked, I took them out, wrung them out as much as possible, and put them on a paper towel on top of a towel to dry. And separating them out here too will speed up that drying process. So here's what I have, and you can see that they're a little bit gray. They are not completely dry yet, but I think they're going to make good bats. If you wanted them darker, you could use less water as I did, or give them a second round of dyeing. Now I also have some black florist wire or paddle wire here, and I'm going to cut about an 8-inch length of wire, or 2 8-inch lengths of wire. I also have a little drill here and a pair of pliers for holding the end while I'm spinning this. You can do this without a drill, I will show you, but it definitely is easier with a drill and comes out better in my opinion. So I'm at the end of my paddle, so my wire is pretty lumpy, so I'm just going to straighten it out. And then what you want to do is insert the ends of the wire in the drill. So you do want to make sure the wire is long enough so you've got the length of the bat that you want, plus enough to insert in the drill, plus a little bit of wiggle room on one end, and then you want enough on the other end to twist it a little bit and hold it with the pliers. And once you have it inserted in the drill, you're going to separate the 2 wires, push one out of the way, and then press the other one down flat. So I really just put a fold in it and laid it down flat on the table. And then again, you're going to try to separate those fibers as much as possible. Mine are not completely dry, so you'll see my fingers get stained a little bit with this bat. And you're going to want to lay out several layers of this. And I did bats that were between 3 and 4 inches long. So between 3 and 4 inches of the fibers laid out so that they're even along the wire. You have the same amount over the wire and the same amount under the wire, because that's going to be the center of your bat. And just put several layers on top of each other here. Once the fibers are nice and thick on the wire, you're going to want to very carefully bend that wire back if you bent it down to lay it flat on the table. And I twist the other end, the end that isn't inserted into the drill, a little bit, clamp that with the pliers, and lift the drill off the table enough so that when you run it, those fibers will not touch the table. Make sure it's all centered, and then very slowly run your drill to twist around the fibers. So I said I would show you, you don't necessarily need a drill to do this. When I was making this bat, the wire fell out of the drill, and I had already laid all of the sisal on top of the wire. So what I decided to do was do it by hand. So I took both pieces of wire out of the drill and twisted it a little bit on each end by hand. And then I started to do it with 2 pliers, holding each end of the wire with a set of pliers, but it turned out it was actually quite a lot easier to just do it with my hands. So I don't think the bat that you get turns out quite as well, but maybe with practice it would. And it really is very, very easy just to twist the wire with your hands, at least easy to twist this paddle wire. I think it's 22 gauge wire. So you don't need the drill. Once that's all done, you get something that you can't believe will ever look like anything at all. Pretty messy. But now you just need to fluff it some. And I actually found it's easier to do this with a large needle. Right here I'm just using my fingers. But you want to, again, pull those fibers apart, untwist any that got twisted into the wire that shouldn't have been, and just try to get it as even around the wires as you can. And then you're going to trim it, and you can just use regular scissors for this. And as with pom-poms, it makes a huge difference when you trim it. So you're going to get it all even, but you're also going to move in towards the center a little bit. And the shape that I gave my bats was sort of tapered at the bottom and the top end a little more full in the middle. Once you've done that, you can cut the wires at either end, and then I used the pliers to bend them over a couple of times so that there were no sharp wires poking out. I then laid that down on a piece of paper and drew out what I thought were a good size and shape for bat wings. That's going to be my pattern. So I then cut that out. And these are some fat quarters that I have from the Dollar Tree. These are the ones that I had that I felt could look the most sort of, I made a primitive bat out of sisal and fabric-y. And I'm going to select one of these for my first bat wings. So here I've chosen this. It's almost purpley, and I like it so much I'm going to cut out 4 bat wings from this one. So I'm going to cut an extra maybe ½ inch around this because I am going to fold the top over. I don't really need an extra ½ inch around the bottom, but definitely over the top we're going to want a little more fabric than what we have in the pattern. And now I'm going to cut 2 more pieces of wire, one for the top of each wing. And I want to make sure that I have a couple of inches that will extend beyond the wing, and that's going to go on the inside, the part that's closest to the bat, because that's how I'm going to attach it to the bat. So I am just going to use a running stitch, but you could certainly do this simply with glue. I wanted a running stitch because, again, I want that primitive look. So I'm going to lay the wire out along the top of the wing. And for a couple of these, I did put a little bit of glue just at the end, just so the wire wouldn't slip around. And then I'm going to use some black thread, but I think, again, you could certainly use a contrasting color if you want the stitches to really stand out. I think that contributes to the primitive feel of this. And I'm going to start the knot on the inside of that fold, and then I'm just going to stitch all along the wing to the front of the wing, again with a running stitch. And of course I'll do that for both wings. Now, once you have your wings done, what I want to do is separate the sisal around roughly where the neck of the bat is. And I want to get as close down to the wire as I can because I don't want the wing to press any of the sisal down onto the bat. And then I'm going to take the wings and here make a decision. Do you want the seam to the front of the bat or do you want the seam to the back of the bat? I thought the seam to the back of the bat. And just take the wire and wrap it around the little neck wire that you've exposed to hold the wing in place, and then refluff the sisal around where you've wrapped the wing wire. Now for the facial features, I looked through everything I had, beads and buttons, and I actually didn't feel I had anything that would work for the size of these bats. My beads were too small, my buttons were too big. So I purchased these very small buttons from Michael's. And for the eyes for the bat, I'm going to give it 2 small black buttons. So they're really not going to be very conspicuous. I think if you wanted to make the bats look scarier, you could use red buttons or red beads. I didn't want them to look scary. So I am just going to hot glue those onto the front of the face. For the ears, I'm going to use black felt. But here I think another choice you could make is you could use the same fabric that you used for the wings. I wanted to use black felt. I cut that into basically sort of a rainbow shape, a half circle, roughly shape, half oval, and then just dabbed some hot glue along the bottom and squished it together and glued those to the bat's head. Now I have 2 bats with slight variations. One has little fangs, and I just cut those out of white felt and glued them to the bat. I sort of separated the sisal a little bit and glued them from the underneath so they would look sort of like they were, coming out of his mouth. And for another bat, I just thought instead of giving him button eyes, I gave him a button nose, and I made him little glasses by taking some silver wire and wrapping it around a pencil to make the round part of the glasses, and then gave it a little bridge, a little space, and wrapped around the pencil again so that the glasses would be the same size. And then I just wrapped the wire around the bat's head. And they're very posable because of the wire in their wings. So I can have them hanging from a picture frame or flying or somewhere in between, sitting. I'd love to know what you think. Please tell me in the comments. Tell me what variations you would have done with these bats. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy this sort of content, please subscribe to Crafts the Charm. Thank you for spending time with me today. Take care.